and welcome to this edition of the Hot Seat this Friday, the 2nd day of August in 2024. And with me in the studio is a panel of the most experienced journalists and pundits to discuss the major events of the week. Leading the pack is the historic of this show. He has been on this show this year. We make it 23 years, me and him. Timothy Kariegera is my village mate from Kanyandahi and is the biggest supporter of Idi Amin. Second next to him is Rogers Magara. Third next is Isaac Rayonde, and then we have Jimmy Otoki. He is what we call the human rights mujahideen. Now, I want us to, this last week I wasn't around, so we have to repeat this discussion on the human rights of the demonstrators who are demonstrating against corruption last week. They threatened. Someone said, you just get out, I'll kick your butts. They didn't get out, these Ugandans. I couldn't understand. They promised that they were going to demonstrate. What stopped them, Isaac?
They did.
Where? And did they ever get to parliament?
No, of course not. Despite the heavy deployment and everything, they came out.
They came out where?
To show their discontent.
Where did they come out?
Different parts of...
On social media?
Not social
media. They were on Twitter. That's where they showed up.
No.
Where?
They were in all parts of the... from Kiseka, everywhere. They were being arrested from different parts. If they were really scared of the army and deployment, they wouldn't have come out.
But how many people are arrested?
Even, you know someone who presents
115.
Really? I thought 1 million people are going to march on back.
Exactly.
So the government should have arrested 500,000 of them.
But they made a statement. It's not about the numbers sometimes. They made a statement and you know...
What Isaac tell us?
My opinion, of course, we sat here and predicted that, you know what, nothing is going to happen. There will be those little skirmishes here and there. And that's exactly what happened. The keyboard warriors who are on fire, and everything. We were here with Wandera asked Wandera, are you going for the... He said, yeah, I'm going to cover.
As a reporter.
As a reporter. I checked on him the next day. The man is, you see, I am busy. But the most interesting thing was in the psyche of the population and how they view protests was in a gentleman who was, I think, a member of an MC group. And
what's an MC group?
I think these guys who go for functions and
MC.
They have an association. So the first thing he did, he called his mother. The mother told him, if you have nothing to do, please come and look my house. Should I hear that you're there? Then he switched off. He called his other friend. He said, you know what?
Join us.
He said, where are you? Tuliko ground. Where you are? Jangu, that one switched off. The other one, they called him. He said, hello. You want us to finish corruption when we haven't benefited yet? Let us first also benefit. And then he made the fourth call. All this time he's recording. And then he called his father. His father said, you know what, my son, this is not the right time to participate in politics. Please leave that alone. In those 5 calls, I realized that he had called the spectrum of the Ugandan population. And all of them were not going to be at...
So where does Jimmy get the idea that there's so many people who show up? Me, I saw some of my reporters at the Independent. They stood at the Independent and they held placards. They never even noticed.
But you see, Andrew.
And Rogers, I was wondering, so your reporters are also become activists and demonstrators?
No, you see, Andrew, last week, the other week, when we were here, we anticipated that there wouldn't be much business on the streets. But for me, I find it was successful that the few that were undermined that they would not make it to the streets like Andrew anticipated, those people that went to the streets represented the voices of very many Ugandans out there. The public in Uganda has been coyed, it has been intimidated for so long, but these people defying the caliber of people that went to the streets is not your common people in Chiseka market or downtown. But these are people, they are alert. We had the workmate here who went to the streets and all people that on Twitter who went there. They made a statement that represents voices of very many Ugandans who don't they don't agree. The old, the young and everybody, they don't agree with the corruption that is going on. However, the government has been successful in intimidating people that if you dare oppose the government or go to the streets, whether you are helping it fight corruption, you won't be held with soft hands. You get it. But for me, I appreciate.
Did they expect it to be any different?
No, they didn't, but they made their statement. And actually, they did not stop then. People have been arrested ever since the 23rd and so on. But for me, the worry is if these people in government understand, they should pay much attention. Now, today we are having the traders protesting. Just imagine if we have the traders protesting, we have the taxi people protesting, we have teachers protesting, interns protesting. A time is going to come when the entire sections in the country are protesting.
Do you agree with that analysis of the time comes? That every section of society, the judges are protesting, the state attorneys are protesting, the lecturers are protesting, the nurses are protesting, the interns are protesting, the traders are protesting,
and the parliament is protesting.
Well, there clearly is a sense in the country that all is not normal, or at least all is no longer normal. Now, the only difference, this Jackie Nsimwe, the human rights activist, you might know her, gave me a very good analogy many years ago, about 10 years ago, which the thing about Uganda is our anger tends to be like, let's say, a saucepan of porridge, where, when porridge heats up, there are all these bubbles and you can really see it's like boiling, but then they boil separately and nothing comes of it. Whereas with, let's say, a saucepan of milk, it will just just rise up once and for all, and then this cream at the top, essentially spills over. So what happens with us is there's a lot of that anger that you see, but it's just like what you see in a saucepan. Pockets of it uncoordinated. Today it's students, tomorrow it's doctors, then it's traders, and it's journalists, individually, not as one voice like you saw those countries in North Africa. That's just the difference. But otherwise, the anger is just there because of conditions, really. Just even if the president himself feels frustrated. You remember when he issued this statement after Mama Mbabazi announced he was running, when he said yes, when he came back from South Africa, yes, there is tiredness, that is expression, and that was 2015. Imagine now. I mean, even for someone like Barack Obama, for all his popularity, by about the 7th year of his rule, Americans still liked him, but they felt, yes, we've kind of had enough of you, Obama. Now we need some change. You tell me 40, 30 something years of all this incompetence, just even human fashions alone. Just some people having just the iPhone 8.
But guys, I want to challenge you on this. The fact that so many people are protesting could be actually the safety valve that Museveni uses. If Museveni had suppressed Ugandans are not able to go on social media, in newspapers, on radio stations and complain, maybe there would be too much pent-up anger. Like if you get a pot and begin boiling it and cover the top, the steam concentrates inside. It can even explode and blow up the lid you have put there. And that is the Arab Spring. Those societies were so suppressed. Many people would say that the Museveni system is an anti-fragile system. I'm taking this concept from Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He wrote a book, Anti-Fragile. He says the most robust, the most enduring systems are not those that are hard and robust. It is those that are fragile and flexible. Because every day, these protests test him and is able every day to keep adjusting his systems to respond to these protests. They become part and parcel of the normal life. They become a kind of safety valve. You know what Batoro say? I need to remember the saying, but it is like something that stands very, very hard. Can easily be broken by wind. But one that bends, a tree that keeps bending as the wind comes, is able to survive. I don't know whether that is one interpretation you can have, that the Museveni system, because it has to deal with protests on a daily basis from different quarters, it has learned mechanisms of adjustment to contain these protests. If it didn't, it would be a hard system. If it is hit one day and all this anger that has been pent up for 20 years is unleashed on the street, the government would collapse. So the threats of protests, and some of them taking place, Kayunga riots, walk to work, Ololo, all these have made the system get familiar and used and is constantly muddling through and adjusting itself to accommodate all these pressures and demands from the different...
You see, Andrews, and I want to task Tim. After that day of that Tuesday night, he went to his X handle, Tim Kajira, and said,
Twitter handle, please don't say X. Who knows X?
Formerly Twitter. So he tweets that the foiled march to Parliament, and he was under attack of the foot soldiers. But for me, and he went on to say that this thing has been done, the protest has been done, and they don't yield any fruit. But he didn't go on to tell people what, in his view, would be the ideal mechanism of the aggrieved people. What should they do if they don't protest?
To give it to people you refuse to. When I said that the structure of Uganda's state is, at the top is what you call the Western countries. That's the true leaders of Uganda in the hierarchy. Then next is the country manager of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, who reports to that board of directors called the West. Then under Museveni is, of course, all of us who keep marching State House and everything. And the one vulnerability Museveni has is this thing which I now call the gay industrial complex. So my suggestion was, in Kenya, you can have all those demonstrations, these guys come in jeans, kiss the soldiers, walk off. That's Kenya. With this ruthless man called Museveni, the best way to handle him, you just come dressed in gay t-shirts, all of you. Come to the rally. Just one story of one soldier, one stray bullet almost hit a gay protester.
Is Uganda so homophobic on gay issues that on the side of Museveni? So they want to use
that's what I'm telling you. But I told them, I said, you just one photograph of a soldier grabbing one protester in a gay t-shirt, and I don't know the White House, I don't know National Security Committee, the European Union. No, but I also leave his
let's take another break. I'll come back. Good evening and welcome back to this edition of the Hot Seat featuring Isaac Kayonde, Jimmy Odochi, Rogers Magala, and Timothy Kalegira, and we're discussing the forever protest against Museveni in Uganda, which rarely take off. So, Isaac, you were saying, Timothy was suggesting that if these demonstrations were by the gay community,
no, by the same people but dressed as gay. But even just a soldier pinching, just a photo on, I don't know, the internet, some soldier holding up.
But what would happen assuming they...
But you know the West. You remember President Museveni, who we are referring to, at the NRM caucus in the State House in 2010, January, when all this Bahati bill began, everybody in the NRM, across the country, 97-98% opposed that whole homosexual thing. But the president said, people, go slow on this. There's a foreign policy implication. And that's when he wanted to say, Hillary Clinton called me when she talked about gays, the Prime Minister of Canada. In other words, just like these monks, later the U.S. Secretary of State, I think at the end of May or beginning of June, did finally admit in Pride Month, Washington dinner, when he said actually the sanction in Ghana was because of this. If you had photographs of people purporting to be gays grabbed by police and you go around the world, the U.S. ambassador, all these diplomats you see who have said nothing, would be personally at Luzera almost signing for. So
I agree.
It's gone that extreme.
Perhaps the question would be, Isaac, whether the West today has the kind of influence they used to have in between, say, 1993 and 2010. Because the emergence of China as a big fund of infrastructure projects in Africa, as a big supply source of intelligence equipment, the emergence of Russia as a major supplier of arms, and say countries like Serbia, I think that the influence of the West on our politics has significantly been diminished by the emergence of China. If they used to control 98%, now maybe they're controlling 40% influence.
I think for me, it's not that it has diminished. It's just that their interests have changed over time. That you see, if they have interest in your country and they choose to remove the leader, they will do anything and destabilize at that point. You have situations where
but they have tried to remove North Korea. They have tried Cuba for
but you see,
years. They have tried. Hold a second. They have tried Cuba. They have tried Iran. They tried Zimbabwe. You know, if a country has internal systems that are robust, the West can sanction. They can do anything, even Saddam, until they invaded him. Short of a military invasion, they may not be able necessarily to remove a government.
I can agree with you. You've qualified your statement by saying, you know what, if the country has a robust system, but most African countries don't have the ability to withstand that pressure from them, whether militarily or... The Museveni doesn't. What I think Museveni right now has a lot of goodwill and experience that has come over the 40 years. He can play two different leaders, on the same table. He can play Russia and Ukraine on the same table and get away with it. That is something that he has as a person. But if the West decides to go for its interests, like we saw in Libya, very strong government.
So they would have to come militarily.
If, you have enough reasons. So if it's a gay thing that they want to push, they will come in here and say, okay, let's do this, right? So
Isaac, how do you explain the fact that the Americans went to Afghanistan, removed the Taliban, lost soldiers, spent 2.1 trillion only to replace the Taliban with the Taliban?
Because they run their race and they notice that.
Because I just want to demonstrate that Caligula's point, which is very important, that the West has a lot of influence, I feel he overstates it. Like in Egypt, I read Obama's book, Promised Land. And Obama mentions that actually they wanted to remove Mubarak, they called the army. The Americans funded the Egyptian army, they trained them, they do this, so they have strong links. They called the army and said, you remove him. Here, whom do they call? The CDF, Mohozi?
No.
It's to say we want to remove Museveni. They don't have control over the Ugandan military.
Yeah, but you see, this is the thing. And
Museveni has personal effective control over the core elements of the state that allow him to hold power. The best they can do is invade here militarily, but I don't think there's such a powerful interest to justify their intervention.
But what I'm saying is that the population here today has the ability to protest, but there's nothing, the cause is what is that has not been put on the surface. And if the IMF, for example, or the West wants Museveni out, they know the economic switches to turn to cause these people.
You are saying these dilapidated roads of Kampala with potholes, with garbage, with mud, and with drainage that is. You live, because I want to look at the effects of corruption, because everybody in Uganda, rich or poor, has to suffer. I wash my car at home in the morning. I tell my people don't wash it, because by the time I reach town, it is worse than when they washed it. So all of us suffer these indignities equally. Yes. How come we are not protesting this atrocious state of roads?
Because other people are having it okay. People going up country, people out there even in the one road they are thankful for. I mean, if you go to Gomba today and they say, hey, Masaka,
yes, but those of us who are residents of Kampala, this is the center of gravity. We should be able.
Yes, but they are showing you that they are doing the roads. They are telling you that we are doing this. They are, so.
That requires a whole other discussion, but to answer you briefly, there's something you said here upstairs when you were the station manager 2004, when you said Museveni and Ugandans have met, this is equilibrium they've arrived at. So in other words, the driving through these roads, yes, these potholes angry, yes, morally, personally, you feel angry about them, but there's a lot of cutting corners that Ugandans also engage in this same incompetence of Museveni that works for them. In other words, the article Charles Nyangobo also 20 years ago, 2004, wrote in the Monitor when he said the day Museveni actually gets serious and clamps down on corruption in a very serious way is the day that military coup finally happens. So yes, we shed these crocodile tears, but even those who go for workshops get per diem. There's just something about the system. Even
the border is allowed to break the rules and drive on the right.
Yes.
The squatter is allowed to touch government land or go to a wetland. The rich man supposed to build in a road reserve. Everybody has their own impunity.
Yes. And there is and that impunity is so small.
It's protected by Museveni.
Or at least is not.
It's the degree of impunity of corruption at the highest level that has more impact on the lower level. That's what the protesters.
So, okay, guys, I want to ask you this question about corruption. The corruption of protesting takes place at the level of parliament. The Speaker of Parliament has been exposed in the mass media and in social media, clearly with her fingers deep in looting the state resources. We have a large opposition community in Parliament, and they're about 120. Then we have independents, and we have rebellious NRM MPs. How come not a single MP has drawn up a petition to censure or impeach her, which has been signed by 5 MPs? I'm not even suggesting 100.
You see, Andrew.
Because these guys, be careful, these are elected representatives of the people of Uganda. And they are presiding, the person heading them is a blatant looter of public resources with impunity, and there is no move by Parliament to censure this lady.
That's the whole point.
What does that tell us?
he tells us that the structure of resources in Uganda, that, for example, it's a case of, let's say, if I were to go sign the petition, there's always this calculation. Okay, there is easy money because of all this corruption that flows to Uganda. Between you signing that petition and going through the headache of censoring her, it's much easier for you to appear to want to raise the motion, and then the president calls and says, hey, please stop that, and then you get a whole huge amount of money. Or go to Among yourself, and in a very short time you say, I'm thinking of proposing this motion, and then she opens the drawer and says, you and I come from the same place. So in other words, that it's the journey between, along the way, it's very difficult to build this principled, system-based way to take these things, and it goes there, she's removed, and it actually works.
But let's leave the MP, Roger, let's go to the voter. The MP should be worried that I will not be re-elected because people are angry at corruption and we MPs are doing nothing about it. Why isn't the anger of the voter an incentive to the MP to behave themselves or to try to do something?
The voters are too poor to recognize corruption in this country. I was in Chotera on Sunday, and the stretch from Masakatu to Chotera, it's a bad road. But when I got to Chotera, people wanted Kasolo back. You know why? He's been giving out borders, motorcycles to different sections of people. And then the person that is there from the NUP, he doesn't have the resources. And now Kasolo has been implicated in corruption scandals of the cooperatives money. But then when he gets that money, like Among does, he takes it back to the constituent and he gives the people money. So they benefit.
So Jim Odok, I'm going to come to his account. Clearly, Roger Magala has made the most fundamental point that corruption is built in the democratic process. That in fact, the demands of the electorate are that the MP should be corrupt. If you're not corrupt, you don't deliver the goodies.
It's like what you've said many times. It's the way the system works, not how it fails.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yeah. Clearly, democracy unedited.
No.
Democracy unrestrained encourages that you as an MP, you must steal.
Maybe what we have is not democracy. It's a pseudo-democracy. It's commercialization of politics that should be whereby, the civic education, voters should be educated that you don't demand this from your member of parliament or from the leaders who are presenting themselves to be elected.
But in a democracy, to voters, the citizen is the ultimate judge. Should he be educated to be a judge? Because he should judge on the basis of the.
You mean there's no civic education during election time? That even parliament, the radio adverts saying, the role of a member of parliament is this, it's not this.
Why is there no civic education in all the leading democracies of the world? Why does it be here? Why does a voter here? The Constitution says power belongs to the people. It does not say power belongs to the educated people, civically educated people. Yes,
yeah, I think for me, I've participated in an election, and I can tell you
you ran as a candidate.
I ran as a candidate in Gomba West under NRM, but I saw what happened.
Then you're the man I want to listen to.
You see, the concept, yes. I went there with my ideas, and what I found on the ground, people don't vote for individuals based on ideas. You don't come here. My car got stuck somewhere, and then I went for a rally, and when I reached there, I said, you know what? My first 100 days, that will be my project. They said, wait a minute, you man. My father used to represent that place back in 19 years ago. They said, your father was here 19 years ago. He left that road like that. We've had 4 MPs along these 20 years. I think 3. They have left the road like that. You want to tell us, you, young man, you're going to come
who we saw in
diapers, you're going to come and fix this road. You know what? Just give us our thing and we'll go. We already like you, But it was so fundamental for me that a person without money but has all these ideas cannot win an election. And it was so real for me that I went on an experiment and I said, okay, let me get my 2000 I got notes, and I started literally just dishing them out because we were doing what you call house to house. So I started giving people 2,000, 1,000, and what fascinated me...
Arrested.
Yeah, I knew, but for me it was more of an experiment. I knew I wasn't going to win anyway. So when I give these people 2,000 shillings. The amount of thankfulness or gratitude they were showing was ridiculous. I said, okay, one of the opponents gave plates for food. I asked myself, really, these are the conditions we are operating in. And so someone out there...
Democracy in a very poor context. Let me tell you, Jim Odoch, about democracy. The American philosopher Will Durant said that there are three systems of government known historically to man that have been very successful. One is a theocracy ruled by religion. The other is aristocracy ruled by birth. The third is democracy ruled by money. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this edition of the Hotseat featuring Timothy Kalyegira, Rogers Magala, Isaac Kayonde, and Jimmy Odoch discussing this corruption and the protest against corruption in Uganda. Guys, I want us to come and to the issue of corruption and protest. I have this suspicion that the people protesting against corruption are naive and misguided. In fact, they're protesting against the essence of democracy in a very poor setting. You, Kayonde, gave us a brilliant example, your personal experience, the ideals you went with, because you learned in theory from a classroom, from a textbook, from a newspaper, that when you go to run for parliament, you run on the basis of particular principles to deliver public goods and services. But you found the reality is the voter is asking not for those high ideals, is asking for basic things. And let me tell you, who is a morally correct person? Isaac Kayonde, who goes and promises roads and hospitals and clinics and libraries, and he's talking to a population who are hungry, have not had a meal, or Andrew Mwenda, who goes and gives money to the voter and in other words addresses the voters' immediate existential needs. If you say Andrew Mwenda is corrupt and immoral, one would ask, whose morality? For the ordinary hungry voter living in a grass-thatched hut with one meal, a poor quality meal a day, who receives a kilo of meat which he eats once in a year, that may be the most morally and ethical thing to do. In other words, you have transplanted the system from Britain and Belgium, an industrialized middle-class rich society, and tried to impose it on a poor agrarian starving, hungry population.
Can I ask, yes. The reason why I disagree with you, although in principle it makes sense, is that in this same Uganda, and poorer much than this in the past, this never happened. In 2005, in the week we observed then, John Sebanaki Stones contesting for the presidency discussed the difference between today's politics and 1980 and going back. And he said 1980, when we were running for that election, we would go to venues, and actually the people themselves, the people who are coming to address, are the ones who used to organize the venue for us at tens. All we did was just come sit and address them. So this argument that this is a transplanted system, no. There's something else which one of these days we need to discuss since the anniversary has come around. In 1985, there's this image of Westerners are now grabbers of land and everything, thieves and all that, you Westerners. But in early August 1985, you know these things, when the essentially the Bote government was thrown into chaotic power, Western Uganda is cut by the NRM. You must have heard of these stories. These NRM, the Jim Wes, Otafiris, and the others went to Bank of Uganda and UCB branches in Kasese, Kilembe, Fort Portal, and River, got money out and all this, and they found Westerners working as normal. In others, they did not wake up and loot their towns. They were cut away from the central government here, but reporting to work in various offices, Fort Portal, Public Library, and all this. So I've always wanted to write about this and discuss this. How did these same Westerners who did not wake up and here in Kampala is cut off and they're now under the NRM go and start a looting spree, and the looting spree was by the usual suspects who came, signed for money and not returning? How did these same Westerners now become essentially the legends of corruption in Uganda? So I think it's very much an NRM thing in particular. Those voters are cynical that they've seen all this. I don't think that that's all they aspire for. I'm sure they know enough. They know they're worth more than 2,000.
Yes.
You see, first of all, you need to understand the dynamics of the vote. Fine, yes, money is being used, but I have seen that the underlying currents, things like tribalism, things like religion, things like of course, money, but those things inform that there's no amount of money. I'll give you an example. Gomba was divided into two constituencies. One is Gomba East, Gomba West. Gomba West has a majority herdsmen. Gomba East has the cultivators. Now, Gomba East majority. When I looked
Are you saying this Bahima and this are Baganda?
Well, Gomba is. I don't want to put it like that because Gomba is quite metropolitan.
Well, I should tell you. So what I did,
the Banyarwanda,
the Banyarwanda, the Tutsi, Banyarwanda, and Bahima. Actually, we went to the census of 2014.
Yes.
And looked, because the FL body mentioned their tribe, and looked at every single village where the majority of the population of Baganda or say they were Banyankore or Banyarwanda, and looked at voting patterns. In 2011, whether you go to Mukono, Mpija, and elsewhere, wherever Baganda were majority, Museveni won. In 2021, 10 years later, wherever Baganda were majority, Museveni lost.
Let me give you let me tell you. Now, for Gomba, the majority are Banyarwanda. But those who are in the area where they are cultivators, those have changed even their names, they call themselves Baganda. The ones who are the other side, who are closer to the Zimbabwe area, those have adopted the Nyankore, and they are, so there's that. So those are the dynamics which happen on the ground, and those influence the electoral vote, sometimes more than money. So because those appeal to the emotions of people, so it's not. So you can't go there with your.
As an example, I have a daughter-in-law. My brother-in-law's sister has a son who's married to a lady who is the MP for Wakiso. So she pays, I think, 3 million shillings to be nominated as women MP for Wakiso. Wakiso is a very big district. It has 4 municipalities and all these kind of things. This girl actually ran out of money. She's an MP now. She ran on an ticket. She ran out of money and never campaigned. Yes, she did campaign. She went and stayed home. On election day, she hears that she has won by 80%. Simply because she was new.
So
and beating Seninde.
Yes, and hands down, she won convincingly, and she didn't campaign.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the same thing that was happening. So for me, the issue here is look, money sometimes. Money is important in the West because they generally have a consensus around NRM. Their money is very crucial.
Not only the West.
Well, I don't know.
Everywhere.
Oh, no, I agree.
But I think
can I just see some constituencies?
So how much money is in the central?
Hundreds of spending 10 billion.
How much money did no
but that was a wave. I know, guys, let me tell you. I saw a constituency in Western Uganda, not mentioned, where each candidate spent about 6 billion.
It's very possible.
So how do you plan to recoup that money?
Andrew, I think the campaigns in the villages are more expensive than Kampala or Chira. And people in Chira, for example, they don't need people to buy ambulances and so forth. All they need is a candidate that speaks for them. But then when you go to Gomba, when you go to Ibanda, the people are poor. It's exactly what you say. They want somebody who attends to their immediate needs.
I mean, the psyche is that, you know what? We have to milk these guys. It's like Christmas.
Exactly.
Once campaign starts, it's like Christmas. They milk and milk. That's why I like I said, I don't feel very sorry for the Ugandan voter when it comes to the parliamentary elections, because one, that's where say in our village there's a consensus that you will vote for Museveni, right? That is the consensus where I vote from. So I can't say it is an open vote, but by the time you reach the other side, they already probably know how you voted. But the MP vote, that one
from the primary,
is secret. No, it's secret. This is the general election.
The final one, and this is for you, Jimmy. If you look at this current parliament, it has 529 members. Of those, only 104, which is about 25%, actually 20%, were in the previous parliament. In other words, the attrition rate of MPs is so high that literally, once you are elected, the chances of re-election fall by 80%. You are unlikely to be re-elected. What are the voters telling MPs? And how does that impact MPs' performance in parliament? Because my own view is that, okay, I know I'm not be re-elected. I had better grab as much as possible, not even return to the constituency where the demands are high, because I want to be re-elected anyway. So in other words, the very democratic process undermines the evolution of parliament as a check on the executive. It actually has to jump in bed with the executive in order to earn money.
That's why the Gen Zs, the protesters, were giving like 7 lists of what should be done and reducing the number of parliamentarians. The number, it's a very big number. So if you have a small number, then it's easy to deal with. They're sure of
who should do that?
Parliament should do that. They should legislate.
So, but the Bator have a saying that in Kende, meaning you cannot have a monkey sitting as a judge in a case to decide the fate of the forest, or a hyena to be a judge in a case to decide the fate of the meat market.
That is the process. How else can it be done?
Well, let me. I much as I agree with you that the Parliament is bloated with the members, but I don't think that's the problem. I can assure you, 50 fools will still do. What we want is the result of what the parliamentarians discuss. China has 3,000 MPs. America has 2 senators.
Let us take another break and we'll be right back. Good evening and welcome to this last segment of this edition of the Hot Seat featuring Isaac Kayonde, Jimmy Odochi, Rogers Magala, and the historical Timothy Kalegera from Kanyandahi village. I think Timothy is other than me, is the longest serving panelist on this show, although he disappears sometimes for 500 years and then shows up when Jesus has failed to return. So guys, we're going to conclude this show by coming back to the protest. In view of all that we have heard, that the voters demand private goodies for the MPs, and therefore if an MP steals public funds and uses that to extend private generosity to the voters are not angry. Who are these protesters in Kampala representing when they say MPs are corrupt? Are they really representing the interests of the voter? Timothy Kalegera, begin with that.
Okay, very briefly, they're doing what should be done. I mean, they're sports, we know the rules, the Olympic Games in Paris, the 33rd Olympic Games are going on. There's such rules. There's offside, there's, there are fouls. So theirs is more their deals. Yes, the fact of the matter is we've been reduced to the lowest common denominator, which is by 2000, I give you a vote. This time, I think one of these people, the Messages, Museveni, they'll go for their campaigns in 2016, 2011, and hand out these T-shirts, unless it was a Thursday. On Sunday at church service, guess what? The whole church was full of yellow and blue T-shirts. Yes, people have been reduced to a point where campaign T-shirts are Sunday-based. But then these people here, if I may speak for them, would view it as trying to raise the bar. So there must be people who, like editorials of newspapers, say, yes, that's this thing, but we insist this must be. So they're doing it the right way. People must come to understand such a thing as right and wrong, not necessarily expediency, if I answer.
Roger.
I think, like Isaac said,
we should define if we say right and wrong, who's right?
Right.
When the voter demands that the member of parliament should go to Kampala and get resources to come and distribute to them, but the theory of our democracy says no, the voter should go to the legislate. The MP should go to the legislate, but the voter thinks he should go to bring goodies. Who is right? The theory
is, at the end of the day, the truth is true. The theory is right, because if the government did deliver services without all this corruption and all these things, then there would be no voter doing that. That's why, for example, because the telecom companies now spread all across the country, almost everybody has a phone. If these things went further, really, truly, with a sense of fairness, there was once a time of fairness in Uganda, people will not be reduced to that level. So this is not that they are even that impoverished, it's more the cynicism. So I think it's, take a stand. But Andrew,
you have taken the question away from Roger.
You see, our people up country can't think. They are very poor. They are incapacitated.
They can think.
No, but that is read our constitution. The constitution says power belongs to the people. And we're saying that, so it belongs to non-thinkers.
Let me tell you, Andrew. It's actually. Let me give you an example. The traders. There is Kasita. They were saying Kasita is an umbrella for all traders in Uganda, and they were telling them to close. It's only people in Chikubo that closed. People up country, their shops are open. They don't have money. They don't hear what is happening in Kampala. People are comfortable down there. And if Amita Mong or Andrew Mwenda as an MP of Toro municipality, Kanyandai, takes a bag of money home, they welcome him as a hero. You get it. But that only speaks to immediate times. But if somebody comes up and convinces them that this is not the right way to go, I mean, any head of the protests, that we need to look at the goal, which is nation building. Maybe they can, but the system that the president has built, I'll go back to what you said, that if somebody is stiff, a leader is stiff, they can easily be broken. But if they are like a chain, like Museveni is, it's very hard. One, you have the roads somewhere that are good.
That's a rhetoric.
Thank you.
You know what that means?
That the strength of the chain is in its softness.
Yeah, and flexibility.
Exactly. So when Museveni comes to the city, he will have a weight he will handle. When he goes to the villages, they have the roads and they feel comfortable with the little that they have. So it is very hard. Even in Kampala, one casita is closing, then there is another group for the traders that is open and they are behind Museveni. I think they can still earn. So it becomes hard to front a voice exactly for the people. So it becomes hard. Maybe it can change when the president is gone.
There's something people have missed in this, the protests. Unless this is why was the government reacting the way it was? And I don't want to sound naive, as naive to discuss the corruption and everything. This here, the underlying issue for the protesters was regime change. And whether you like it or not, every single protest that has happened in other jurisdictions has started with a cause. The cause can be bred and everything, and it ends up with the leader falling. In Kenya, it was the finance bill. Oh yes, they achieved everything that they needed, but they still went for
and they are
continuing to Ruto must go. Yes. So the issue here is simple.
Which shows that Ruto made a mistake
to concede on the very first. So for me, the issue here is that in as much as the cause for the protests were right, the protesters came into the few protesters who came and expressed their anger against corruption. Everybody hates the corruption that is going on in this country. But ultimately, the state was fair or was justified in their thinking that, you know what, this otherwise good cause could end up causing regime change. If you told me 300,000, not even a million, 300,000 around that parliament, what would stop them from marching to Nakasero State Lodge there or demanding that Museveni must go? What would happen? The issue of the unintended consequences of these protests had to be addressed by the police. And they
so
did.
Guys, let me read for you this. Jimmy will conclude. There's a Nigerian journalist called Pini Jason. He wrote something which is called Jason's Law of Corruption. It states that the decibel of an average African's public outcry is directly proportional to his distance from the opportunity to do exactly what he condemns. The difference between many a vociferous, sanctimonious, and pontificating African and the villainous, itchy-fingered kleptomaniac is probably the absence of the opportunity to steal. In all probability, should the opportunity occur, yesterday's moral crusader is more likely to crumble and disappear under the weight of corruption. And he went on to say this, Jason, this Nigerian journalist, that he meant that the further the distance of an African from power and authority position, the higher the noise he makes against acts of corruption. The nearer he is to the position, the lesser the noise he makes.
I absolutely agree with that man, and our opposition has proved that. That here in Uganda, it's a thing of thieves who don't have opportunity to steal, think they are honest.
So do you think us who are criticizing, when we get the chance, we will just keep quiet and
it's a system? Okay, that is actually, I think that Jason is correct, but he presents his argument, his brilliant argument, wrongly. He looks at this as a failure of individuals at the level of morality and ethics. I think what he fails to understand, when you're out of power, you can afford to be sanctimonious and say all these things. But when you go into power, when you go to run as an MP, you force a reality and you have either to lose or adjust yourself to the reality. The reality of managing power relations in a poor, illiterate, backward agricultural society is that use of public resources for electoral purposes is so important. If you go to Britain, you go to America, you go to all these other countries, and you look at them when they were still at our level of development, whether you look at social structure, meaning the share of the population that depends on agriculture for a livelihood against that depends on industrial services, the share of the population that lives in urban areas and that lives in rural areas, the share of the population that is educated, the share of the population that has a per capita income of, let's say $10,000. If you look at those things and you look at public spending per capita, you will find that Britain was managing exactly like Museveni manages Uganda when they were at the same level of development. In other words, you can afford to be idealistic when you're out of power. When people come to power, it's not that they are bad people. It is the system imposes it upon them. Museveni came making all number 2 item on the 10-point program was fighting corruption. And Museveni has presided over the worst forms of corruption in Uganda's history. And the more we have democratized it, the more corruption has been entrenched.
Yeah, but tonight I was going to say something, but then it's gone.
Maybe we have run out of time, so
I'm glad I haven't said. No, I haven't. I was going to say something about his corruption before he came to power, but I'm good.
But because we're struggling for power. If you want to struggle for power, because he has told you he needed the money to go and buy voters, so Museveni also needed the money to fight a war. So
something different, but as I say, I'm glad we're out of time.
Okay. Thank you so much, our listeners, for joining us. We have run out of time. I have been. My name is Andrew Mwenda, the old man of the clan, the Colonel General of the UPDF, the Lord of the Karanga Archipelago, and also the Shogun of all the clans of Uganda. And I have been having Timothy Kalyegira, Rogers Magala, Isaac Kayonde, and Jimmy Odoki, who is the leader of the Human Rights Mujahideen. Good evening.